I don't even know how to begin writing this, or how I can explain it in a way that makes sense. I know it won't be believed, but I tried my best. That's all I can do. For context, I work for the CIA, and I have been an officer for over 10 years. I have never worked out in the field on some super secret or whatever other bullshit people are spewing nowadays. I will skip all of the backstory and just say that I work in a facility out in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico. I got reassigned here around 2 years ago after being a desk jockey for most of my career. It was what you would call a black site, although it's not as crazy as you would expect. It's literally just designed to be completely off the grid so that work can be undertaken with no interference or no possible way of information being leaked on the spot. I don't work there anymore, and I imagine that if I still did, then I wouldn't be after this, that they would find out somehow. The thing about black sites is that there is no due process. Some of them are being used as detention centers, and people are being detained and interrogated, sometimes for days on end. For the majority of the time that I worked in that black site, I was the bozo who had to fill in documents, fill in paperwork, and make notes or pass on information to the real people working there. I had to oversee interrogations from the outside of people who were deemed to be terrorists or international threats or whatever. Let me tell you, those are not pretty. It's not a lie that these places have major human rights abuses, and it all happens right under everyone's nose. But I mean, hey, who cares? These people are evil and assholes, right? So who cares if they don't have rights? Well, let me tell you about one night I will never, ever forget. So I had to help with prepping a room, a medical room to be exact, because a detainee was being shipped in later on in that day. They did not exactly say what for, but it's not like I had room to ask. I helped set up a medical bed with straps. We set up monitoring equipment, IV drips, etc. Anything that you would ever need was in that room. Around the time the prisoner was due to be brought in, an alarm went off in the facility that I had never heard before. It wasn't like a big blaring one with the rooms all flashing red. It was more like a very high-pitched one. It was at a frequency where it made my head ache, and it only pinged once. Everyone in the facility was ordered to leave their posts and gather in a specific room. Coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, this room was at the entire opposite end of the facility to this room that I helped set up. I saw men floating in from one of the entrances, wearing what were basically hazmat suits, and they basically manhandled me and forced me out of the way and told me to keep on moving. There were so many of them coming through the corridor that it blocked my view, but I caught sight of something through all of the commotion. One of them was carrying some sort of box that had a handle, and it looked like there was a light coming from out of this box, like some sort of glowing green light, just ever so slightly escaping. And they were carrying some kind of a stretcher, and it had someone on the stretcher. I only caught the sight of a thin, long leg. It looked as if the person had a hockey stick for a leg, and the skin was so pale too, deathly pale. That was all I saw before I ended up around the corner. 5 hours we all spent in that room, just muttering to ourselves and wondering what was going on. Then that high-pitched siren went off again, and we were all ordered right back to our posts. Before I could even get to mine, a man in a hazmat suit pulled me aside and gave me what I think was a debriefing, like a mini one. But he was speaking in such awkward, veiled terms, it was hard to make out what he even wanted. He gave me a suit, a hazmat suit, along with another guy who was there for a similar job as me. He told me to keep it on at all times, to only take it off when instructed, and to follow all orders when they were given, because it was a life or death matter. I'd never been worried or scared before in this place, but now I was beginning to get really worried. I was told to mentally prepare myself and to not be shocked at what I saw, that everything would be explained to me later, and to just do my usual job, no exceptions, no questions asked. The person I saw that they carried in, they were strapped onto this medical bed. Only, it was not a person at all. I know this is going to sound like bullshit, but laying on that bed was what I can only describe as some kind of non-human thing. It was partially shaped like a human, but with some big differences. The skin on this thing was so pale, it was like it was bleach white. The limbs were so thin and stick-like, and looked to have no muscle on the bones at all. The bones were weird too. On the fingers, on the arms, on the legs, the bones looked as if they all jutted out at right angles, but then were segmented multiple times. And when this thing twitched or twinged, and I saw these limbs move, it was almost like there was a delay to them. The first segment would jolt, and the other segments of the limb would follow afterwards, kind of like a wave. None of it really made all that much sense to me. I had to do shifts of watching scientists in these big heavy suits work on this thing for hours at a time, and I would have to note down everything that I saw. Sometimes they would shout something to me, and I would have to make a note or do something. This thing was asleep, or looked to be, I think. The only time I saw it move looked like involuntary movements in reaction to stimuli, like electroshocks or physical contact with metal tools. I almost thought that this thing was dead for a while, because I never saw it breathe, or open up its eyes, or move normally, but I was dead wrong. This thing only spent a week in there before the entire site was locked down. Personnel were relocated, and I assumed the thing was either shipped away or terminated or something else. But even in that short amount of time, way too many things happened to properly explain here, or for me to even remember properly. So I will just tell you about the final thing that does stick in my mind. The scientists have begun dissecting this alien thing and trying to work out its anatomy. I don't know why this was done while the thing was still alive. I don't know why anything happened the way that it did. One of the scientists made an incision in the thing's abdomen, and this viscous black liquid started to leak out of the alien. It looked thick and goopy and just horrible. This incision, by the way, was no easy process, and the skin on this thing did not just give way. The scalpel got stuck and had to be ragged out of the thing. At one point, the scientist started trying to saw through this thing like he was cutting thick rope. I think he took off a tiny thin layer of skin at the top before switching to a different tool and eventually sawing his way through. It looked nasty and painful, and when this liquid leaked out of the thing, which I'm assuming was some kind of blood, the thing shot awake and started raging against its restraints. It started making this hissing sound. This was the first time I ever saw the thing's eyes. They were massive and seemed to take up the majority of its head. They were shiny, and I saw them shoot down really quickly, like it was analyzing everything in front of it really quickly. The eyes seemed to shift rapidly between the two scientists right in front of it, down at its own wound that was leaking, and then right back up to me, again and again back and forth, quicker than I could even really see. It locked eyes with me, and when it did, I felt myself pee a little. I could not even control it. That is how frightened it made me. After a few seconds of it shooting its eyes around rapidly, and one of the scientists rushing to grab a syringe of some kind, the alien stared at its own wound and then closed its eyes. It held them closed for a second, and in that time, the scientist rushed back, but he could not get the needle to pierce the skin this time, so he moved his hand over the open wound in order to inject it there. While this thing had its eyes closed, I could see that the wound and where this thick liquid was, there was some kind of steam slowly rising up from it. It wasn't a lot, but it was definitely there, like a little puff from a kettle. And then the scientist hovered his hand over and then finally injected this thing. The alien opened its eyes and I don't know how to explain it other than some more of this liquid, this blood, spurted up from the open wound. It seemed to shoot outwards like it was propelled and managed to basically cover the hand of the scientist. Literally the second that this happened, the scientist ripped his hand away and was just screaming, and his eyes were so wide. His hazmat suit where his hand was, it had all already melted away, and this liquid had sunk down onto his actual hand, and he was just screaming. He actually ran over to the window where I was and started pounding on it and begging me for help. The guy with me went to fetch someone, but I stayed there to keep making notes. I was not allowed to do anything per the rules that I was given, and one of us had to be taking notes at all times. It sounds ridiculous, but I was not about to disobey orders, especially not in a place like that. I could see steam coming up from the liquid on the scientist's hand, and it looked as if the liquid was growing or spreading in diameter. It looked as if his entire hand was covered in the stuff now. But where there were gaps, and I could still see bits of the hand, I could see that most of the skin was gone, that there was bone partially peeking out. I don't know what happened, but the scientist just seemed to go crazy. By this point, the alien was no longer lashing out against its restraints. It was passed out once again on the bed, I guess because of whatever it was injected with. But the scientist with the liquid all over his hands, he rushed towards the other one and tackled him to the ground. He proceeded to start smacking him again and again, back and forth over the head, until little particles of the liquid transferred over to the second scientist's hazmat suit near his head. He just kept screaming while beating him, and this went on for a while. And then the liquid started melting through the second scientist's suit, and he was screaming too. That was about the last thing I saw before more people arrived to handle the situation, and I was removed from my post, and all of my notes and details were taken away from me. That alarm went off again, and we were all ordered away. 48 hours this time. For 48 hours, we were all stuck in that room, with only a few rations of food being given to us every so often. We had nothing to do but just sit there. I was given the usual debrief afterwards that you would be given for any assignment, with the relevant documents to sign and fill out. I was, of course, never given any explanation, even though I was promised one. And that was the end of my time there at that black site. I know it sounds like pure horseshit, but that's honestly all I have. Take it as you will. I just felt like it was my duty to maybe share this somewhere that it could be saved, and so that a record could be kept. Here is a story that happened to me personally. It's about an apparition, or a wight, that resides in the woods near where I live. So, when this happened, I'm a military vet, not from the US. I am a trained information gatherer and scout. I have a decent bit of combat experience, so I am not easily fazed like some people might be. I am currently living in a semi-forested area. The picture on screen now is a mountain near my place. I have been having trouble with tweakers cutting through my property. To dissuade them from doing this, I start doing semi-regular patrols to try and catch them in the act and maybe give them a little bit of a scare. So, one day, I am on one such patrol. It's particularly steamy outside. I am sweating balls, literally. I decide to take a break. I find a huge, old-growth softwood tree. It's easily 15 feet around the base. So I take a seat, lean back, and take a swig from my canteen. The shade is pretty cool. It feels good. Suddenly, almost out of nowhere, a strong wind kicks up. A cold wind. On a hot day, mind you. I perk up suddenly because something just feels off. I start scanning the trees. I spot something overhead. I freeze on the spot. It looks like a human silhouette floating around 30 feet in the air. It's semi-transparent. I can actually see the older trees behind it, right through the thing. It looks almost like the forest is embossed around the shape of this thing. I blink a few times, hoping the thing will just disappear, like it's my imagination or something. But it doesn't. I am overcome with a slow, creeping fear. It's hard to explain. It felt like I was trespassing on someone's territory, like I was not welcome. That's the feeling that I had. I think screw this. I loop the shoulder strap of my backpack over my arm, grab my rifle with my other hand, and hop up to my feet. I take off running as fast as I can away from the floater. As I flee, another strong wind kicks up. It's so cold. Even in the 98-degree sunlight, this thing hitting me makes me feel freezing. I'm panicking. I realize I've somehow gotten turned around. In familiar terrain, how the hell is that possible? I know every each and which way around this area, and I am lost. I do not recognize anything. I take cover behind a tree and appraise the situation. My heart is pumping in my ears. I am feeling watched the whole time. I eventually get my bearings and navigate out of there using a creek as a landmark. I eventually reach my property. The fear I feel subsides somewhat, but it really bothers me that I somehow got lost in familiar territory. I do not like the feeling. I stay out of the area for quite a while. I tell some friends about my experience. They're a bunch of wannabe pagans, and they claim that what I saw is called a forest wight. Apparently, these things can follow you home, which is not good. They tell me that I need to return to that forest and explicitly tell the thing that I have no quarrel with it, that it does not have permission to follow me around. I figure that it can't hurt. I return to the old growth softwood. I speak audibly into the forest, saying exactly what my friends told me to say. My friends also suggested that I leave an offering, something natural. I leave a wooden figurine and a bagel. I resume my patrols. I never feel any more spooky things in the woods, just me and the occasional tweaker. These next two stories are about a crazy dude back in my hometown named Roy. First, a little background on how Roy went kinda nuts. Then I will tell you about a supposedly haunted murder weapon, followed by the time I saw a weird creature on Roy's property. So, this is back in my hometown. We've got this guy named Elaine. Dude is a complete menace. He's kind of like a local celebrity, but for all the wrong reasons. We also have these two brothers who are very well liked, Roy and Roy's brother. One day, Psycho Lane invites Roy's brother on a hunting trip. Roy's brother is an easygoing guy. He knows that Lane is not exactly friendly, but decides to take him up on the offer. The two boys go up into the mountains. Only one of them comes back. The death of Roy's brother is ruled a hunting accident, and there is not enough evidence to say that it wasn't. But knowing Lane, everyone is suspicious. He becomes a true outcast and spends the rest of his days living alone on the outskirts of town. He does manage to sell one of his guns though, and it changes hands a few times. This gun is the rifle that he supposedly used to murder Roy's brother, and for this reason, it is supposed to be haunted. For anyone that cares, the rifle was a Winchester, or to be exact, it was a Winchester model 1892 in .45 long, with an octagonal barrel, 20 inches, or maybe the next size up, I can't remember. It had a plain blue finish, minimal checkering on the handguard and the butt. It had a Lyman peep sight added to the receiver. The gun could have been a museum piece, it was beautiful. Anyway, one of my buddies ends up with this rifle. He's kind of an out-of-towner. He picked it up just by chance. He does not know the gun's history at all. He keeps it locked up in a safe. When he first shows it to me, he tells me he thinks the thing is bad luck. He claims he's had a series of weird experiences ever since he bought the thing. He's apparently had some unusual accidents. Some of these accidents have been serious, like the time a severe windstorm caused major damage to his property. He experienced misfortune after misfortune. I only ever experienced something minor with this gun. It was the first time that my buddy showed it to me. He let me hold the thing. The TV was on in the background, and the moment I took the gun in my hands, the TV suddenly went to static. My buddy and I looked at the TV. There was a long moment of static. I handed the gun back, and when I did, the TV went straight back to normal. Like I said, kind of a minor thing. But what I did not tell my buddy at the time was how I got a really sick feeling when I held this murder weapon. For a reference, I have tons of war trophies in my collections, all with grisly histories. I even fired an Arasaka Type 99 once, but I have never gotten a feeling like I got when I held that Winchester. It's impossible to describe, except to say it gave me an ominous feeling, like a darkness hung over me while I held it. After that, I can't help but wonder what exactly went down in those woods with Lane and Roy's brother. And as much as I love classic rifles, I'm glad that one is back in my hometown, 1,400 miles away from where I currently live. I forgot to mention that Roy himself deteriorated mentally after his brother's death. I'm not 100% sure if it's related, but Roy was later diagnosed with schizophrenia. It was pretty sad. Every few months, he would go off his meds and do some crazy shit. For example, I found him once attacking an asphalt road with a pickaxe. He was screaming something about zippers. Apparently, he believed that there were underground tunnels all through the town, which led directly to his shitty little shack. Thieves, or zippers as he would call them, would use these tunnels to sneak into his place and steal his stuff and then disappear before he noticed. He also claimed at times to be a reincarnated soldier from the Union Army named Robert G. Stebbin. So yeah, it was bad. Roy went from being the most well-liked guy in town to being banned from virtually every public space. He and that little evil fucker Lane became our town's outcasts. Anyway, my family and Roy's family had always been really close. After Roy went full schizo, my parents had me check up on him from time to time. I would deliver fresh water to his shack and just generally see how he was doing. I didn't mind. Even when he was off his meds, Roy was always friendly with me. He said I had a good aura. He still did weird shit though. Like once, he offered to show me the room where he said he spoke with Satan on a nightly basis. I politely declined. But back to my sighting. I am delivering water as usual. On this particular trip, I have one of my friends with me. We find that Roy has ripped up all of the floorboards to his shack in order to expose the underground tunnels used by the zippers. He's tossed the wood into a heap and set it ablaze in a bonfire. Being off his meds made Roy a serious talker, so my friend drops off the jugs and settles in for an extended stay. It's getting towards late evening. Roy is rambling about something or other. The woods around us are going dark. In the last light of day, I spot something in the trees behind Roy. Here is the basic description of what I saw. It was this humanoid type thing. It was really skinny and really tall too. It was maybe 1.5 times tall as an average man. It looked to be covered in shaggy black hair. It's just standing there for a moment before it turns around and bounds away into the brush. It was this bipedal thing. It looks back over its shoulder as it goes and runs away. It moved through those thick woods and brush much faster than any person could have. After it finally disappears, I am still staring into the trees when my buddy tugs at my sleeve and asks me, "Did you see that too?" That moment gave me goosebumps. I don't know what I saw, but whatever it was, I did not imagine it. My buddy saw it too. Believe me, the two of us had a long and silent and very intense car ride home that night. We did not even talk about what we had seen until we were back and feeling safe inside the house. After discussing it, I gathered that my friend really only saw the thing after it had moved. He did not see it standing there and watching. I got the much better look at the thing. We discussed what it logically could have been. We decided it did not fit any logical explanation that we could think of. We decided to just drop it. These days, that patch of woods is abandoned. Roy's hut was demolished quite a while back. The road leading to it is blocked by fallen trees and old, abandoned cars. It looks to me like the road was deliberately impeded by junk, maybe to keep people away. Who even knows? I never saw that thing again though, whatever it was. The pic I'm showing right now is from the general area. Okay, so, both my grandparents were born and grew up in rural Mexico. They had a ton of spooky stories and experiences. This took place around 1930 to 1940. My grandpa lives on a farm outside the main village. He is around 12 years old by this time. It's nighttime, around 8 to 9 p.m. There is no electricity. There are only candles and oil lamps, so it was pretty dark. The whole family is inside, waiting for dinner. For no apparent reason, Grandpa started to feel off. He described it as feeling worried. The sensation increased. The environment felt heavy. Not only that, but he saw how the whole family felt similarly. His sisters played quiet instead of being loud. His mother looked really off, as well as his father. The sensation increased up to the point that there was no other sound, no crickets or wind blowing. Suddenly, there is someone knocking on the door. This is weird. As my grandpa explained to me, no one used to knock on doors in this village. If they know you, they will whistle or shout out your name, and as this was a small village, everyone knew each other. Also, the dogs are not barking or making any noise. They had around 5 dogs to protect the property. My great-grandpa checks from the window and opens the door. My grandpa tries to peek outside and hear. There is a girl in her early 20s with a little boy around 8 years old. My grandpa recalls the conversation was about the girl and the little boy being lost and needing help. My great-grandpa questioned who they were, where they were from, etc. My great-grandpa is acting weird. He is taking way too long to reply to the conversation. My great-grandma is puzzled by this and peeks from the window. She screams and tries to pull great-grandpa inside. Great-grandpa is big and she cannot move him. He seems to be in a trance. My great-grandma slaps him. Great-grandma is a tough woman, punching this motherfucker Mexican macho man. My great-grandpa snaps out of the trance and gets inside. The kids are now scared, thinking grandpa will punch everyone. Both great-grandpa and grandma are terrified. They start praying and ask the kids to do the same. The girl outside says nothing, and they can hear her walking away. Great-grandpa is in shock. Minutes later, they have dinner in complete silence and then go to sleep. My grandpa recalls seeing terror in both their parents. Great-grandpa was a tough man. He had fought in the Mexican Revolution and enjoyed killing and shooting bandits that had tried to raid his property. This terrified grandpa. He had never seen his dad like that. The next day, Grandpa does not dare ask his parents what happened. Grandpa is sent downtown for supplies. There are people already talking about the same stuff. Grandpa asks around and for more details, and apparently, they all agree the same, but with different variations. A girl with little boy knocking doors asking for help. They all report a weird sensation before and during the encounter. Some people state that they had no eyes. Others say they were floating, or that they even had horns and stuff like that. Grandpa does not remember those details, as it was dark when he peeked outside, but it makes sense why their parents were terrified. Grandpa is scared and goes to great-grandpa to tell everyone about what he heard. Great-grandpa is mad and tells grandpa not to talk about it. He tells him, talking about the paranormal only strengthens them and calls them. Fast forward to a couple of days later, and everything is normal, or as normal as it can be, I guess. However, there are missing folks from the village. A family of 6, an elderly couple, and some homeless guys have not been seen since that night. Their houses were all empty, with rotten food still on the dishes. They look and ask around for them in other villages, but there is no trace of missing people at all. My grandma, who actually lived in the same village as my grandpa, was around 3 years old when that happened, so she does not remember it, but her parents and family told her about that night. It is actually still remembered among the people in the village, and to this day, They all believe it was some sort of devil kidnapping people, trying to lure them away from their families. They never found a trace of those people, by the way. They never came back or turned back up. They were just gone, with no explanation as to why or where. Over time, the version of the incident changes depending on who you ask, but they all claim to have experienced the same or similar things, so it can't just be a coincidence. It can't just be a fake story to scare people, especially not with the way my grandpa told it and how real it felt.